And this is Gerald with the End Time Shofar. In this video expose, we'll be dealing with UFOs, demonic deception, and the unseen world. We know for a fact in most recent years, the U.S. government has been releasing to the media that Air Force pilots have encountered these unidentified flying objects, flying at record high speeds and going all kind of crazy angles and just disappearing, which is something that is just mind-boggling, that it's just something either technology outside of this world or something more spiritual to it. As a Bible-believing person, we have to review this in a biblical perspective. Even secular researchers have come to the conclusion that study UFOs and aliens. They come to the belief that these aren't flying objects and beings that are coming from a far-off galaxy, but interdimensional beings that have a nefarious plan to cause mass deception and the destruction upon mankind. So when we view this expose, hopefully it will give people a biblical perspective on UFOs and aliens.
Question, can you tell us about UFOs?
My sister, before my wife came around, used to be leader of the state of Ohio, the high priestess there of the whole state. And her little pastime was calling up, supposedly filling the sky with UFOs and watching everybody's excitement. And some of the most outstanding sightings were in the early 70s in Ohio. And she used to laugh about it because she'd be standing in a circle out in the field somewhere calling up demons. And that's all they were angels of light playing games in the sky. Remember, a demon, get the little spooky picture. There are a fallen angel, an unclean spirit. They can assume any form or go into anything except a Christian who walks in the Spirit all the time. Know any? Or in other words, a Christian who keeps it under the blood and so on. But they can assume forms, including spacemen or solid objects like flying saucers or so on. That's why when they appear on the radar scope and a jet gets up there, they vanish right in front of the palace eye because they're nothing but a spirit.
Theology. People want to know what the truth is. They want to know how to think about who they are, why they're here, and does this book we call the Bible have any validity at all? I'm often asked, well, are there UFOs? And when people typically ask that question, what they sort of mean up front is, do you believe that there are extraterrestrials flying craft around the sky? It's a sort of a simplistic way to approach things, though. Yes, there are lots and lots of UFO sightings that are legitimate. What does that mean, though? It means somebody's looking up in the sky and they see something that they can't identify. That's all it means. Now, even if they're a trained observer, like a pilot or a military person, someone who's used to seeing, aircraft, even they will see things that they cannot identify. They don't really know what that is. There are thousands of such reports every year in the United States. This is not an isolated sort of thing. So if that's what we're talking about, yeah, there are UFOs. The question is, again, how do we process what we've seen? There are experimental aircraft that very few people, even among trained pilots, would know what that thing is. Again, we have a long history of this in the United States. All that said, though, there are some that just defy categorization. There's something about the object, either in terms of the way it changes shape, or you have instances where one will explode, for lack of a better term, come apart and then reassemble. Things like this that just don't seem to fit any of the other templates. So there are anomalies. When you start talking in those terms about something you visually see, you are inherently sort of drawn into the spiritual world. And that's at the point where a lot of people, again, are really especially interested in the topic, because when they start treading into that turf, it gets them into religion, it gets them into theology, it gets them into the Bible.
We know that UFOs and aliens are demonic in origin is because they travel like demons, okay? Now, I need to make a little caveat here. I'm not saying that every occurrence of a reported UFO, unidentified flying object, is what I'm talking about here. I think the bulk of them, frankly, are governmental aircraft from around the world. Two, I think they can be explained away by natural occurrences and things of that nature, okay? And I think a lot of them, unfortunately, are flat-out hoaxes. But there is an element that I don't think you can deny, and that's the spiritual element. But let's take a look at how demons and angels travel according to the Bible, and let's see if we can see any parallels. Here's just one passage dealing with this aspect. 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 15 through 17 says this, "Now, when the servants of the man of God got up and went out early the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city." Okay, Elijah's servant. And he said, "Oh, my Lord, what shall we do?" He started freaking out, right? If you recall the passage. And so the prophet says, "No, listen, don't be afraid." Okay? The prophet answered, he knew better. He said, "Those who are with us are what? More than those who are with them." And then Elijah prayed and says, "Oh Lord, would you open his eyes that he may see, i.e. the spirit realm, what's really going on?" And then the Lord opened the servant's eyes and he, "Hey, I see it now." And he saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elijah. Okay? In other words, he saw, it was there the whole time, he saw the angels of God, God's army was bigger than the earthly army that was coming against him. You don't need to be afraid, right? Now, that's not necessarily why I'm bringing that up. I'm bringing it up for this. This is just one of many passages in the Bible that tells us how angels travel. And we know, if you know your scripture, that demons are in the angel category, just of the fallen angel category, okay? And what we see in the Bible is that angels have the ability to appear and then disappear. They have the ability to pop on the scene, and next thing you know, where'd they go? And pop right back out. They, in other words, have the ability to materialize and just dematerialize. And here's the whole point. Can anybody guess what method of travel it just happens to be that these UFO entities can do and use? It's the same thing, folks. Listen to what the secular researchers are saying. This is secular research. After decades of research, UFO experts are saying that UFOs are not so much physical in nature as they are spiritual. And that's all based on how we see them travel, okay? The ones that aren't hoaxes or governmental aircrafts. They say, first of all, they clock them up at speeds up to 15,000 miles per hour, making right turns, which would instantly destroy anything physical. You would be road pizza. You would disintegrate, okay? You can't handle that physically, okay? Secondly, they make no sonic boom like a normal physical object does. That's another clue that they're spiritual in nature. Third, radar has never recorded the actual entering of UFOs into our atmosphere. They just pop on the scene. We don't have reports, "Here they come, Bob, they're coming around the moon. Yep, here they come. We've got, what's that? They're going to be here in 23 hours and 14 minutes, and there is none of that. All of a sudden they just, they're there in the atmosphere. That's kind of interesting. Four, these so-called aliens seem to be able to live in our atmosphere without the help of respiratory devices. Isn't that a quinky-dink, if evolution is true? You just happen to always be able to breathe our air. Interesting. The five, UFOs have been fired upon by multiple governments, and just both seem to go right on through. Nobody's been able to bring one down physically in that means. 6, UFO entities seem to have the ability to materialize and dematerialize, as if, quote, coming from another doorway or portal, which is what the Bible calls the spirit realm, and that's what angels and demons do. Okay, now, after decades of research of this, based on this, listen to this, folks, UFO experts are now saying, this is secular researchers. They are now saying that these beings are not coming from outer space, far across the universe. They said they're coming from inner space. They're coming from another dimensions, and that's just happens to be what the angels and demons do. Interesting. In fact, they say there's no need to entertain this thought that they're coming from outside Earth. Listen to this. This is secular researchers, and this is Flying Saucer Review, folks. This is a secular entity. Gordon Creighton, the editor, he said, quote, "There seems to be no evidence yet that any of these craft or beings originate from where? Outer space," okay? Brad Steiger says, "We are dealing with a multi-dimensional paraphysical phenomenon, which is largely indigenous to where? Planet Earth." And finally, Arthur C. Clarke, he says, "One theory that can no longer be taken very seriously is that UFOs are what? Interstellar spaceships." i.e. that they come from outer space. We should not even entertain that idea because that's not what the secular researchers have witnessed over decades of research.